Alright, so this is my new counter and the back splash. It's just 2 sheets of MDF glued together, cut and routed. And what I've discovered here is because the old counter was just 3/4 inch thick and this one is now 1.5 inches thick, I have a problem with the height. If I put this on with this backsplash, it'll be over the mirror. So what I've done here is I've set my height, and if I set this down here and I butt my backsplash up to it, I am too high. So I'm going to mark that and then take it out to the table saw and rip it down to the right height. So, going back into the house now from the shop, cut this board down to size. Now it's time to go inside and measure and make sure that it all looks right before I get into all the details of pouring epoxy and painting, because I would hate to have to redo it all after I've done it. So pre-checklist before you get going, make sure your surface is prepped, make sure you're ready to pour, you don't have any little sanding you need to do of imperfections, dust, debris, anything like that that may have settled on top of your surface. Get yourself a measuring container. This is a 2.5 quart measuring container. This is good because you can measure to 1 quart and then 2 quarts, and you can get exactly 50-50 on your hardener to resin mixture. 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch trowel is what I've been using. Some tint. I have some metallic flakes that I might use. I have a plastic stir stick. Plastic doesn't stick to the epoxy, so that's nice. Stir mixer thing. I have a battery powered drill. You can use any drill you want. Butane torch to pop air bubbles. And I have some spray bottles here, and you'll see how these work. This is 90% isopropyl alcohol, just standard rubbing alcohol with metallic flakes mixed into it. Make sure you shake these real good before you use them, and test spray off your surface before you spray on your surface. I have my epoxy hardener. This is the actual hardener additive, and then my resin is sitting in a warm sink warming up. You want to warm up the resin because this stuff flows really well. It's kind of like water almost. The resin doesn't flow all that well, and so if you warm it up first, it helps it mix better and flow better. Don't warm up your hardener. If you warm up your hardener and you mix it in your container, it'll probably set really fast if it's hot, so don't warm up your hardener. Alright guys, gloves. Please wear these. You're going to need a paintbrush, I forgot to mention that. Make sure you kind of pre-pull it to make sure you get as much hair out of it as you can. And this one's a cheap one. I hate using them. Hopefully it doesn't ruin things, but don't use a cheap brush if you can avoid it. We're going to take our epoxy, the resin, part A. Okay, well, I don't know if it's part A, B, but usually they'll label it part A, meaning the first part you want to add. So we're going to mix this first. I've preheated my resin in a sink. Just make sure I don't have any dust floating around in here. And I'm going to mix this to the 1 quart line. So then I'm going to take my epoxy hardener. Okay. Now once you do this mix, you have 40 minutes to really work with the product. Mixing is the most important part of this entire process. Okay? Mixing is where you do not want to go wrong. If you go wrong on the mixing, everything else is for nothing. If you go wrong on the 1-to-1 ratio and you go, that's close enough. No, 1-to-1. and make sure it mixes very, very well. I'll show you some techniques that I've developed. So I'm going to go up to the 2-quart line with this, because I have 1 quart and I'm going to go up to 2 quarts. So now we're going to mix. Put it all the way in. Hold on to your bucket so it doesn't move around on you. Move the drill up and down to the bottom, to the top, but don't ever take it out of the mix, okay? Make sure to get along the sides. Kind of spin it as you take it out. That gets the most epoxy off of this. Now, I don't really see any more swirls in this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this to scrape the edges. I'm going to go along the edge because the resin likes to kind of cling to the edges and stick to the edges. And I'm going to stir up the bottom. Okay? But I'm scraping the edges now is what I'm doing. And this is what I'm going to add my metallic flakes to this. I'm going to add some pearl. And I'm going to add a little bit of my tint, white tint. You can use lots of things to tint this. I'll explain that in the description. A little bit takes a long way. So much changes externally. Now I straighten my edges real good. Mix again. Come on, drill. Okay, as soon as you have it mixed, you want to pour it out because it will harden in here super fast. So I'm going to pour this onto my surface now. So it's on here, it's over here. It's going to be more than I need. Just over here, just over here. Just trying to distribute around surface. I'll my edges as much as I can. Pull the water. We'll push on this piece just kind of get this piece going, but this will be a nice piece in the pocket. Is it? 1/8-inch trowel. What we're going to do is we're actually going to mix this on the table. Use a foam roller, somebody foam roller, or a trowel. Lots of options. There's like how you use it. This kind of stuff is a lot. Extra. It's very messy problem. You can see. One of the reasons I'm surface so that it flows over nice kind of raise surface tension. So I have it on here. So I'm going to the edge. There's already some material there that's floated. That's how it is. This is our part. Basically, you have to pull right here. So I'm going to pull around. It's back here. Take it out. Go through the front edge. You don't want to squeeze so much. You just kind of want to pull along. Or just pull it to this edge like this. Just kind of like. Just float over. In here. Pull the tail around a little bit. Make sure nice stuff here. Like a 4.5 every one a little bit. Not too much. You want material to self-level. Now all I'm going to do is just kind of break this up because you can see there's patchy spots, right? So I'm just going to kind of chop it up so that it kind of evens out a little bit. This also mixes it again. So it doesn't have uniform color because super uniform color, so I make sure my edge here is covered uniformly so it doesn't voids on there. I'm kind of taking off the ground, but it's not thinking we're going to do so. Okay, here. Check my edge here, so good. I don't see too many spots in like. Alright. So let's search those things. Alright, so I'm going to holes. You don't ever want to keep this in one spot for too long. You'll actually burn the epoxy. And you want to really be careful with your edges. It'll cause the epoxy to run off the edges real fast. So I'm just sweeping it across the surface. You can see those air bubbles popping. You can keep doing this. Air bubbles for 45 minutes. Or so. Last time. So I'm going to use this towel flake to spin so fast. Okay? I'll show you how this one works. I'm going to shake it. I'm going to spray here. Whoop. You can see that. There's marking inserts. You want to let that alcohol evaporate off. I'm going to do something else here. I'm going to take a little bit of silver spray paint. I'm going to spray some on my fingers. I'm just going to flick it on. Alright, so what I'm doing here is we didn't want this countertop to have strong darks in it, and so when I did that, I thought I saw just the darks in it were too strong. So all I'm doing here is coming in and just kind of chopping that up a little bit, just to kind of help it blend in a little bit. Also, just help it fill in. You'll get it set the isopropyl alcohol creates. Isopropyl alcohol creates the What I'm doing is just kind of a little bit of a random pattern, moving all over the place, moving this material around and trying to chop up those darks. And then, that's better. Still some pretty strong darks in a few places. I'm going to just kind of chop them up. Okay. Some really strong spots. Just right there, see it? Right here. Yeah, I'm just kind of breaking up that pattern a bit. Okay. Force this one more time. So I'm going to do one more coat real quick, a little bit of metallic. Just get that marley effect on the top of the surface. I don't know if you guys can see it, I can see a few spots where the epoxy has kind of left a little crest. Okay. First little thin probably. This, just add lines to it. And I'm going to put this, I'm not as concerned about the pure on coat, but it's not light solid, I'm not super worried about it. I'm going to put the paper root. I'm going to do a clear coat on it later, which I'll show you. But that's the easy part, folks. That was the hard part. I don't know if you guys can see the shine that's in it. I don't know if you guys can see the metallic. You'll see the surface is really uneven right now. It's because I just sprayed all of that alcohol, and it breaks the surface tension and creates little divots. The torch will take care of some of that. You'll never get rid of all of them when you do it this way, and that's why I really recommend doing the top coat over this to seal off and make it perfectly smooth and level after you're done. All right, guys, here it is. Can you see that glass finish? And this is only the first coat. We'll do another clear coat on top of this. You can see a little bit of ripples in it. See, like some little ripples? That's from adding the alcohol to it and the metallic flakes. But the next coat will be glass, perfectly smooth. Alright guys, final clear coat is done. I put a small amount of metallic pearl into the final clear coat.